Hey everyone, Eric on Paper here, and in case you hadn't figured it out, I'm Eric. So we're going to be looking at some Spider-Man 4 storyboards today. A lot of you asked for it on the Spider-Man 4 video, and what we're going to do is break down the very opening sequence of the movie, and then I have a little surprise for you. So the most important shot of a movie is the first one, and what I decided to do was show a weird distorted New York for an establishing shot, but then we're going to begin pulling out slowly. And what this establishes is that we are seeing New York reflected in Spider-Man's eyes. And then we pull out further to see Spider-Man standing heroically on that rooftop. I wanted the opening shot to really connect Spider-Man to New York because the two go hand in hand together. New York is his city, and that is a theme that we're going to see throughout the movie. Now, you don't even have to be a great artist or draw super detailed storyboards, they just have to be enough to communicate to your cast and crew what you want. Now, the little surprise I mentioned is that I'm going to storyboard a sequence in front of you guys, talk about my thought process, and hope you enjoy it. Now here I'm going to be setting up a fight scene between Spider-Man and the Rhino, and it's scene 6, so of course I mark it accordingly. And with shot 1, what I want to do is introduce an abstract image. In this case I chose a suspension cable along the tower bridge. Now, the audience is going to wonder, wait, why am I looking at this in the first place? Well, the answer should be coming up shortly because what I do is moving from left to right. If you want the movement of an object contained in the storyboard, draw your arrow within the board itself. If you draw the arrows on the outside, it means you want a camera movement. And what I want to be flying through the frame is we're going to see the underside of a police car being hurled with great force. And as I said, you don't even have to be a great artist. This is just a suggestion of it. And this is still the same angle that we saw previously, still shot 1, scene 6. Then I'm going to continue along the same way with, again, scene 6, shot 1, continued. Now, even though we're still in shot 1, I want the camera to pan over, so I draw an arrow from the outside of the frame indicating that movement. And when the scene goes into visual effects, because as much as I want to fling a police car a great distance for a cool special effect, that's just not in the budget. I did beg Bren, but he said not enough Kickstarter backers, so oh well. Anyway, we're going to be panning over, and then also from the right, I decided I wanted to see some of Spider-Man's webbing come flying into frame, and just draw the arrow inside the frame, so that indicates that that movement's only happening within the frame, and just some darkness for consistency. Now, why I had the police car just in general come from screen left, it's because that's traditionally how the human eye and human brain processes information from left to right. So if something comes from the left of the screen, it has a higher chance of making the audience jump, or if in the case of a horror movie, or take notice. Now, still keeping up with the same shot, I'm going to have the police car now flipping and getting suspended in the giant spider web, which will have popped out. Now, Sam Raimi took a lot of inspiration from Silver Age Spider-Man comics, and he would use these kind of web blankets a lot in those, so I figured it'd be a cool way to pay tribute to both the Silver Age Spider-Man comics and Sam Raimi. Now finally we're going to be jumping to another shot. Shot 2. Yes, 2, I can read my own writing. And what I wanted to do with that was to establish Spider-Man in the scene, set up his geography, and set his tone. And I wanted Spider-Man to just have his arms up, be like, okay, stay there, just be safe, you know, almost as if willing the police car to remain there, and also get some depth in the shot too, by having him in the foreground and having the a visual effect of the police car and the wedding in the background. Now, another reason we do storyboards is determining what exactly we're going to be needing when we shoot. Like this element of Spider-Man, for example, is easily done live action. Of course, we're going to be on a green screen for this, but it lets everyone involved know, okay, Spider-Man will be a real element, the police car will probably be CGI, and so will the web. And now, to establish another story beat, we're moving on to shots. Still the same shot, shot 2, and I put continued every time just to make sure that everyone knows I want a longer take. And in this case, Spider-Man is going to turn to the left where we established the police car flew from, and where the threat came from. And I already spoiled it for anybody watching this video, but for audiences who are seeing it for the first time, there's going to be a little bit of suspense as to what made the police car fly. And ideally, with every shot, you would kind of want to give the viewer new information or establish a new beat. If you don't, your shots become redundant and your film starts to feel very padded. And yeah, I'm not putting a ton of detail into any of this. As you can see, this isn't quite the same as my comic book art. Now here's a shot that when I was having my early meetings with Bryn, he really wanted. And I thought it was a great idea for a shot, and he said he just had this vision of the Rhino charging through a police blockade. And I absolutely support this vision and incorporated it into my storyboarding. So we're going to have the Rhino coming dead center of frame. Now you typically don't do this. You try to follow the golden ratio and have your subject off following the rule of thirds to the left or right. But in this case, I wanted to show the Rhino as an incredibly powerful force, and that symmetry of having him knock cars out of the way just makes him look all that stronger. And yeah, Rhino dead center coming at us also places us in Spider-Man's shoes as a viewer. Now, when you're doing storyboards, film, even if you're shooting, unless you're shooting 3D, is essentially a flat surface. And just like a comic, you're going to have to figure out as many ways as possible of showing depth to your audience. So that's why I love coming at you shots. I love all kinds of camera interaction and movement, all to shatter the illusion that we're staring at a flat surface. Now we're going to punch in for an extreme close-up of the Rhino here as he's roaring and charging, and for that, realistically, the camera's going to have to dolly out while the Rhino's moving toward us. It's going to have a subtle handheld feeling, not so choppy or motion sickness inducing, but really I wanted to show the actor playing the Rhino, give him his close-up, and establish that character. We've already established Spider-Man, so cutting to him and his reaction would be a little bit redundant, but we do need to see how Spidey's going to respond to the situation. So the script indicates that Spidey's going to come flying at the Rhino with a kick. So we wanted to set that up, and I thought, okay, if we're introducing the Rhino coming at us, let's give a high angle for Spider-Man and have him do his web thwip kind of at the camera, but not quite. We're going to assume that he's going to latch onto a suspension cable, but introducing that perspective and that depth as Spider-Man looks at where his web is going to go makes a shot more interesting than just a dead-on flat shot. Always rotate the camera whenever possible, and I just put some road lines to indicate that, okay, this is a street, and the triangle eyes are just Spider-Man in case anyone had any confusion. Now, this shot, I wanted to establish, I'm a big fan of old fighting games, or just fighting games in general, and I love the equal camera angle.
where you really get the size difference of each character and see exactly how they size up against each other. So I wanted something similar to that, and I wanted wider shots since we've been getting these close-ups where you can see the bridge, we can see Spidey doing this flying kick, and this Spider-Man would most likely be CGI, and that's something that we determined through storyboards. We could just make it up as we go along, but the film would take much longer to get made, be much more confusing, and would get to you guys, the fans, a lot slower. Rhino here will probably be live action as he runs in the timing, I'm going to make a note down below when I start writing in notes that I'm going to want Rhino in frame first before Spider-Man. And the reason I'm going to want to do that is it gives Rhino more time to set up and think. And here we're getting an insert shot, and that weird bean shape is supposed to be a foot. This is essentially what I do for rough sketching. Is my comics is pretty much my final storyboards for internal projects. And the Rhino's arm is gonna, or his hand is gonna shoot up and grab Spidey by the ankle as the foot comes in. Insert shots provide critical information to the viewers, and I always like to keep things moving in there. So now we're gonna come up with our bigger shot for the sequence. It's gonna be a lot of fun, where Rhino starts swinging Spider-Man around in circles. Uh, Again, I wanted to keep this very Silver Age, like something that uh, that Steve Ditko would draw, as Rhino swings Spider-Man around. We're going to keep this at a lower angle to make the Rhino look more imposing. And uh, I go in later and start adding in details to this, like arrows where things are supposed to go. And now here, pretty much I just write out my thoughts in case there was any confusion or I had an idea that I didn't feel I communicated adequately. And if you want to see how the rest of the fight turns out, well, that's going to be a spoiler alert, and I am not going to reveal that. I am super excited to shoot this scene because the Rhino is one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. I actually get to put three of my favorite Spider-Man villains in this movie, so I am extremely excited about that, but I can't give away the ending.
There's a montage of Spider-Man fighting various villains in the beginning. Sam Raimi wanted to include this as villains he wanted to use but didn't feel were strong enough for an entire film. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that. I'll be doing some more Spider-Man 4 related art soonish, but keep watching the channel. I have a lot of art projects in mind, and eventually we'll be releasing my own comics and discussing them here. So keep watching and keep telling your stories.